Hello everybody, my name is John and I'm going to be presenting about secondary sources. So when writing assignments, we often look at primary sources since it is the original source, but sometimes looking at secondary sources is also a good idea. Secondary sources are secondhand information, and it is another point of view where they create new ideas from primary sources such as research, presentations, and even novels. There are many benefits to using secondary sources, such as more interpretations and seeing other commentary for research purposes. When engaging in secondary sources or when reading secondary sources, I would often refer to primary sources such as the main source as well. I suggest not to heavily rely on secondary sources, as it may oppose to the main source, which may also make their work less credible or less trustworthy. My reading practice is to annotate on a sticky note and write down what surprised me and what I thought was interesting. After that, I would refer to the original source to gain more background and context information. But I suggest you guys to not annotate with just sticky notes all the time. And I'll get to that in the following few minutes. An example is how I annotated in this book called Humanities Core Handbook 2022 to 2023 World Building, University of California, Irvine. This was made by the humanities seminar leaders and professors, so I think that's also very cool. Okay, so an example is in page 138 or chapter 13. The title is What's Wrong with Museums? African American Artists Review Art History by Professor Crooks. So I have a lot of examples of how I annotated in the right corner for the sticky notes. So there will be a sticky note on the right side, and these will include main ideas and things that were interesting to me. So I'll give you one example from my annotations. In the first one, where I annotated 3 pages, or 4, if you're counting the painting picture I'll show later. Page 139, 141, and 142. So I'll talk about my page 141 example. This is a painting that was made in 1710, and it is Justice Engelhard Cohen with Henry Darnall III oil on canvas from the Court Seat of Maryland Center for History and Culture. So what I said was African American artist uses that painting and uses it for art. When people walk to the painting, the lights will go out except for the child who was a slave. There will then be like an audio that talks about how he questions about where he sleeps, where does he dream, who washes him, and who combs his hair. And what struck me was how it also included who calms me when I'm afraid. So what I wrote was that he needed safety, love, and care, which slaves back then never has, since they're often mistreated and always just abused, and this is really unfortunate. But what was interesting to me was the lighting and voice effects, and as previously mentioned in my second section of this DIGICHIVE or digital archive, Annotating with just sticky notes is not the best way to annotate scholarly and effectively. It is better just to write in the book if able to and highlight anything confusing or interesting. You can also write key context to the sections, and after all that, you can relate to any confusing or interesting ideas to the main source, where you can also compare and contrast the ideas of separate authors and artists. So the audience for this particular scholarly work are most likely students or people who are interested in other sources of information. The rhetorical purpose is to inform others and to engage through primary sources. Readers or students are able to identify scholarly claims and terminology used by annotating the text and information provided if they have encountered several things that they do not recognize, and they can either use online resources to look for more sources with the same context. And when the author analyzes primary sources, readers are able to identify how they give credit and how they can provide context to the information they want to give out to the public. And secondary sources are often interpretations of the primary source, so there are many different ideas leading to the same context. And finally, references that sparked my interest in reading more secondary sources or biographies written decades later, because it is always nice to read other authors' perspectives on actual people who wrote about themselves, and that's why I like reading secondary sources. And thank you guys for watching my video, and don't forget to look for my examples of secondary sources in my DIGICHIVE.